Jason Adkins, Executive Director of the Minnesota Catholic Conference, and with me is Sean Peterson, Associate Director for Public Policy of the Minnesota Catholic Conference. And we're here for Inside the Capitol, your look at the legislative landscape in St. Paul from a Catholic perspective. Sean, it was another busy week. We weren't able to have Inside the Capitol and do this show last week precisely because of Catholics at the Capitol.
Right, a great event, Jason. And, we had over 1,000 Catholics at the Capitol. And I think when we were planning the event, we thought we were going to have to energize everybody. And I felt at the end of the day, I was energized for the rest of session. And we had great results with meetings. We had legislative meetings with almost every single legislator across the state. And I think Catholics are really excited about what we did, and I think they're going to stay engaged from now on.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of extremely positive feedback from those who attended, but also legislators themselves. House Speaker Kurt Dott was kind enough to come down and to our central meeting point in the Capitol Vault to greet us and our bishops, which was really nice. And it was just a great way to build some momentum as we finish out the legislative session. Now, we've talked about three of the issues on these shows of Inside the Capitol that were covered at Catholics at the Capitol: expanding educational opportunity, promoting family economic stability, and imposing a legalization of assisted suicide. Mm-hmm. So I want to take a little bit different direction today and talk about a couple bills that may perhaps on their face seem unrelated, but in reality are very much tied into what Pope Francis talks about in his important encyclical Laudato Si, subtitle on care for our common home. And part of that encyclical was about respecting the environment, but also respecting all of creation. That includes our bodies and ourselves as well. So two related pieces of information that we'll talk about. The first, becoming responsible land stewards and fostering good agricultural policies, but at the same time declaring pornography a public health crisis. So we'll say a little bit more about how those things are related, but I think we might just want to say up front, really just about caring for creation in all its aspects and becoming responsible stewards and promoting public policies that allow us to be better stewards of all of God's creation.
Right, Jason. So the first two bills I'll just mention in the maybe what people might think of the more traditional sense of agriculture. We have a beginning farmer tax credit that we're supporting and that we've been help advocating for at the Capitol. And so what that would really do is that would allow a farmer that's already been a long time established farmer to get a tax credit if he'll either sell or rent part of his land or some existing equipment that he owns to a beginning farmer. And that definition from the FDA is a farmer that's been farming for 10 years or less. Because really, as we know, the most difficult way to get into farming, the most difficult reason to get into it is because of cost. It's very expensive to farm today. And so we're hoping that by giving this tax credit to existing farmers, they'll kind of help bring in the next generation of farmers into it, so we can hopefully regain some of the small family farms. Our farms have gotten larger and larger. Our families have gotten smaller. We want to try to reverse that a little bit and see if we can get some new farmers back into our rural communities and really get those back on track again.
So it's about rebuilding rural communities, encouraging the vocation of farming and the agricultural leader, something that's been really in the news from a church perspective with the release of Catholic Rural Life's document, the vocation of an agricultural leader. So definitely consistent with some things that are being talked about on a church-wide basis, but also really helping to foster food security. Smaller families and folks interested in moving to the cities and not taking up that vocation of agriculture or farming has really promoted agricultural consolidation, and as a result, all of us suffer from a food security standpoint in the sense that fewer and fewer centers of production are producing the vast majority of our food. So increasing the diversity of our food supply is really, really important as well, and this is the type of bill that could perhaps do that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned a little bit about moving to the rural areas, but we also have to remember another bill that we're looking at is a pilot program that would actually give grants to those that want to do some food growing in our urban areas. We have a lot of groups in our urban areas that plant small acreages and provide really healthy, nourishing, nutritious foods, especially to disadvantaged communities that can't afford fresher foods and better foods. So we're also supporting a bill that would give grants to those folks so that they can start a little business, feed their families, bring some good food to the urban areas, and also in some cases get rid of a little bit of urban blight. A lot of times these plots are done in cities and they turn them back into green space, which is good for the environment as well. So I think we forget sometimes where our food comes from. And I think by doing some of these programs, we might get people a little bit closer to where the food comes from and make them realize it doesn't always come from a grocery store shelf.
Yeah, it's hard to care about the land and care about land stewardship if you don't have an proper appreciation of the soil and the fact that it's really from the soil where our food comes from, and helping more people in the urban core understand that food doesn't just come from a grocery store or in a box, and then creating sources where those foodstuffs can be placed at food shelves, for example, but also be educational for people who live in the city that agriculture is an important vocation, and it's really respect for the soil and respect for the land is important no matter where you live. That's a laudable evangelical goal, we might say, as well.
Absolutely. Yep. So two really exciting bills. Both are moving. The beginning farmer tax credit is moving fairly quickly. It's moving. It's going to be included for consideration in both tax bills in both the House and the Senate. And just yesterday there was a hearing on the urban farmer grant program. So really exciting news on those two fronts.
Great, and folks can follow those on our bill tracker at mncatholic.org if they want to get the bill numbers, and then follow along their legislative path of those pieces of legislation as well. So turning a little bit into seemingly a different direction, but on a subject that I think is deeply connected in the sense of caring for creation, not only caring about the environment, but importantly, caring for our bodies and respecting the dignity of the creation of the human person, the dignity of the human person, and deep assault on the dignity of the human person today in our culture is pornography. It's not something that just simply impacts individuals and families, but its usage impacts the broader society as well and creates a whole host of social problems, particularly when children are exposed to those to pornography at a young age, and then those pathologies increase. So building off of what the U.S. Bishop said in Creating Me a Clean Heart, a pastoral document on the problem of pornography today, we're looking at legislation and actively promoting legislation to declare pornography a public health crisis. Sean, what does that mean practically speaking?
Well, practically speaking, so we have a bill introduced. It's been introduced in both the House and the Senate, and it is a resolution. It's a little different from a traditional bill that people might think of that either enacts something in law or spends money or something like this. But it's really a resolution in bill form. But it's really the state legislature, and eventually, hopefully, if the governor would sign it, it's really the state of Minnesota saying that we see this problem as a public health crisis, and it has risen to that level that we as a state are coming together to say we need to look at this issue finally. We need to talk about it, and then I think from that resolution, down the road we can start looking at what are practical legislative ways that we can start not only stemming the tide, but looking at this problem. So 3 other states so far, the state of Utah, Virginia, and South Dakota have passed similar resolutions. Ours is based on those, but there's been some changes. Again, that's also on our bill tracker, and people can go and read that resolution. But this is a huge problem in our country, and it's growing.
Well, we've built powerful public awareness campaigns around smoking, around recycling, and certainly this pornography issue is something that deserves similar attention, and hopefully that this resolution can be the start of deeper consideration, more study, more awareness, public awareness promoted at the state level about the scourge of pornography in our homes and in our communities.
Absolutely, and that's really what it's really a mechanism to bring light to the problem. A problem that we haven't really discussed publicly. I think it's one of those issues that people kind of try to shy away from a little bit, and they know it's a huge problem, but no one really wants to talk about it. But I think we've seen, as you were saying, with other issues in the past, once you start talking about it, it makes it okay to look at solving it.
The first step to correcting a problem is identifying the problem in the first place, right?
Absolutely, admitting it exists.
Well, Sean, thanks for your time and sharing with us a little bit more about those 2 important bills that you're really spending a lot of shoe leather on at the Capitol, so we're appreciative of that. And this has been Inside the Capitol. Again, I'm Jason Atkins. This is Sean Peterson. We're here to give you that overview of the legislative landscape from St. Paul and all through a Catholic perspective. Again, you can find out more about these pieces of legislation and others at our website, mncatholic.org. Click on legislation and go under bills for a list of bills on which we're working or taking a position at the Capitol. And always go to our website, mncatholic.org. Follow us on social media for your updates about Minnesota's legislative landscape. Thanks very much for